Axelay by A.T. Gonzalez.
Arcade-style shooters are something Konami was known for during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Axelay for the Super Nintendo is one of these arcade-style shooters. It was one of Konami's earlier games for the console.
A distant solar system has been invaded by an evil alien force, the Armada of Annihilation. The Armada wipes out the solar system's defense fleet except for a single fighter called Axelay. You, as Axelay, must destroy the evil alien forces.
Nothing too complex here, a conventional one versus many premise that's appropriate for a game like this. You can map the action commands to any button you desire. That's always welcome. The first thing I do is make sure that the missile and the laser are the same button. You can even modify the trigger speed and the brightness of the screen. From the get-go, this looks like a lot of the shooters we've all seen before. The design of Axelay makes me think of the arcade game Raiden, and I can't help but get a Twin Bee vibe from this game too. But then you play the game some more, and you realize that there's a little bit more to it than just being a shooter we've all seen. There's 6 stages in total, which makes this a short game intended to be completed in one setting. A full playthrough shouldn't take more than 45 minutes.
Stages 1, 3, and 5 are played from a vertical perspective. By contrast, stages 2, 4, and 6 are played from a horizontal perspective.
The weapon system and damage values are handled a bit unusually. As a default weapon, Axelay has a dinky laser beam and dinky missiles. At the start of each stage, you select your secondary laser weapon, a side gun, and auxiliary missiles. Assuming you're using the default controls, you can toggle between all 3 of these weapons using the shoulder triggers. You have lives, but unlike other games from this genre, you don't always die in one hit. If you hit a solid object, yeah, you're space dust. But if Axelay hits enemy fire, it'll take the hit, default to the next weapon going from the left to the right, and briefly gain invincibility frames. If you lose all your weapons, you're stuck with Axelay's default dinky gun and dinky missiles. Taking any sort of hit in this state will make Axelay lose a life, meaning that you can take a maximum of 4 projectile hits per life, but you can only crash into a solid object once per life. You get extra lives depending on your score, which is determined by how many enemy ships you take out. The easier the difficulty setting, the more lives and continues you get. There's no quote-unquote shield repair or power-ups during stages. That means that you gotta fly carefully and shoot carefully. However, Axelay gains new weapons between stages. I'm sorry to say this, but most of them are fairly useless, except for the needle gun, which homes in on targets, and the wind laser, which looks damn cool. I guess they were trying to do something a little bit different from Gradius's weapon edit setup, but overall the customization options for this game are very limited. A major mechanic that would be quite behooving of the player to master is the Vulcan round. The Vulcan round is the side gun that the player will spend the majority of the game with as the default side gun weapon. When you press down on the firing button, it shoots toward you. When you release the button, it gradually swings back. This is used to deal with swarms of enemies, or ships facing diagonally from you. Axelay is one of the few Konami shooters on the Super Nintendo that was not a watered-down arcade port, but rather it was built from the ground up using the Super Nintendo hardware. Unlike the Super Nintendo port of, let's say, Gradius 3, this game doesn't suffer from occasional nasty slowdown. The only major technical issue I have with this game is some sprite flickering in Stage 5. Graphically speaking, Axelay is a sharp, crisp-looking game with a lot of vibrant colors. Sprite layers and transparencies give the game a lot of visual depth, while sprite scaling and rotations are used to create the illusion of high speed. Of course, we also get some stunning boss battles. Man, Konami sure had a thing for mechanical spiders back then, huh? And the Stage 2 boss reminds me of that thing from RoboCop. Axelay also does a little dance when you beat a boss. It's kind of amusing. Axelay's music was composed by Taro Kudo, who also did the music to Super Castlevania. Much like Super Castlevania, Axelay has a very jazzy soundtrack. But while Super Castlevania's sound design was meant to invoke a gothic atmosphere, this game sounds much more upbeat. The audio quality sounds incredible, considering the hardware that Axelay was developed for, and the era it was developed in. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that this was CD quality audio. We even get a voice sample before you start a stage.
Arms installation is complete. Good luck.
It's a nice little touch. Stage 4 in particular, that echo, the water, the grays, the moody music, it all sounds very cave-like. If you own this game or plan on getting it, make sure you're playing it with a subwoofer. That bass is amazing. When I think of Axelay, I think of a graphical and audio showcase wrapped around a standard, competent shooter. It's one of the best shoot-'em-ups on the Super Nintendo, but compared to the rest of the genre, largely unremarkable. Axelay is a natural fit for Super Nintendo collectors, Konami fans, and enthusiasts of the shoot-'em-up genre, but it's a bit hard to recommend otherwise.